The expertise reversal effect is when all the tricks and tips you've learned as a teacher to get your student to actually understand what's going on and build up their expertise, all those tips and tricks are the very things you shouldn't do when the guy or the girl has become an expert in the area itself. So it's called the expertise reversal effect. So let's take a look at the definition. So here we go. As learners gain expertise, they acquire additional schemas, so they've got more structured knowledge in their head, and they improve their automation, so they're doing things quickly and they're doing it sharply. And what that means is that the ideal conditions of learning are going to change. You're going to teach the kid differently, and this is going to happen in lessons and between lessons as your students develop expertise. Right? So they say it very clearly here. As a result, the instructional techniques, all of which we're going to go through, I'm going to show you all these good techniques which are really effective for a novice. And bear in mind, in technical and vocational education, we're dealing with novices all the time. We're trying to upskill them. But all those tips and tricks, they're going to become ineffective and even detrimental to the learning for an expert, right? And that's called the expertise reversal effect. So let's look at a couple of examples of it. So the first one is using worked examples, right? So worked examples are fantastic for a novice. What is a worked example? Well, you say to the student, here's a question and let's do it. And here's the first step. Then what happens is you do the second step. Then here's the third step, and you show it all to them. And that then gives you the answer. And the student goes, fantastic, I can really use that, right? The other thing you can do is you can leverage dual processing, right? This one over here, leveraging dual processing. And what happens over there? Well, what you're doing is you're making sure that at the same time that you are talking and using the students listening, how's that ear for you? You also are showing them something using their vision, and you're combining those two things together, and that really works a charm, right? You've got a voiceover, and you're making sure that the diagram that you're working with has a voiceover. You're not just working with labels. The third one is you avoid split attention. So when you're working with a text, what happens is, here's the text. You make sure, for example, if it's got a diagram, what you do is you make sure that you put some of the labels in the diagram itself so that the student doesn't have to find it somewhere else. Now, it's very different when you're working with an expert, right? With an expert, what you want to do is you want to provide practice in problem solving. They don't need to know what the explanations are, what the issues are, all the additional extra information. They're just like, hey, give me the problem and I'll try work out the answer. And the second thing which they're not looking for is they don't want you to continuously explain. Minimize redundancies. Minimize all the extra ways you're trying to do it. Don't give them the audio and the visual and an explanation and all the extra stuff. Just give it to them in one form and let them work with it. So for those of you that think you've got it, that's fine. But what I'd like to do now is demonstrate it with some research which has actually come in so you can actually try and understand it. And this is a good study which was done by McNamara, Kinch, Songer, and Kinch. And it's quite old, but what you'll see is we're dealing with a situation where we've got low prior knowledge readers. Okay, so they don't have a lot of knowledge in the area. And then you've got some other guys who high prior knowledge readers. Now, they're going to want very different things in the text itself. Now, a high coherent text, this text over here, that is where you're working in a situation where you are explaining, you've got nice diagrams, you are adding voiceovers, you're giving definitions, and so on and so on. So the text is coherent. And think of an article which you have to read. Sometimes what happens is, for novices, it's a really good idea to give all sorts of extra additional information about the article itself. Now, a low coherent text, well, a low coherent text over here, that's a situation where it's just the text itself. or just the article itself. Now, it's going to be pretty obvious, actually, that your high prior knowledge readers, right, these guys over here, they are actually going to just want the article, the low coherent text. They are going to like the article in its own terms. And you can see that. Look how well they do in terms of just reading the article itself. They understand it really well. And in actual fact, they don't like a situation where you give them a high coherent text, right? So for your high prior knowledge readers, they just want the article. They don't want the explanation. But if you're a low prior knowledge reader, well, then you're in a situation where if you just get the article, the low coherent text, if you just get that, you're going to do really badly. Look at that. And what you're going to want is you're going to want a situation where you get this nicely explained text with the definition and the explanation and the diagrams, and that's actually going to improve your understanding. So what we can see over here, it's a very good demonstration that you've got to teach very differently depending on whether you've got a low prior knowledge reader, in which case you give them a highly coherent text. And if you've got high prior knowledge readers, well, then just give them the bloody thing itself and let them get on with reading it and solving it.